Hey, it's Vanessa from CraftyGemini.com, and today's cooking project is going to be with the July 4th theme since it is July 4th here in the United States. I have an apple pie recipe that we love to make here in my house, and I thought I'd give it a little twist and make some apple turnovers, but with the same filling that I use in my apple pie. So let's go over the supplies and ingredients you'll need and jump right into the recipe. So we're taking a little help from our grocery store and we're buying puff pastry sheets. They come two to a box like this. This is what they look like once you start to defrost them. You can see, you want to follow the instructions on the box to let them thaw out and so it doesn't crack or break on you. So I'm going to leave that there. Then what I have underneath is actually a silpat that I'm going to be using to bake my stuff on. If you can use, if you don't have one of these, you can also use just some parchment paper on a cookie sheet and that'll work fine. Moving over here, we're going to need some cornstarch, cinnamon, ground cinnamon, some nutmeg, salt, 1 lime. I have 3 Golden Delicious apples, which is the apple that I prefer to use in this recipe. I have some regular plain white sugar, some brown sugar, and then as far as your kitchen supplies go, you're going to need a cutting board, a knife. I like to use an apple core to take out the cores of my apples for cutting them, but you don't need that. A spoon, some kind of a grater or a zester, some measuring spoons, and 2 bowls. So the first thing you want to do is take your dry ingredients and put them in one of these small bowls. And what this calls for is 2 tablespoons of the white sugar. So there's 1 and 2. Again, 2 tablespoons of packed brown sugar. So I'm just going to lightly pat that down there. 1, 2 teaspoons, which is the smaller one, okay, of cornstarch. There's 1. Just a little pinch of salt. That's plenty. I like to take fresh nutmeg and freshly ground it in here. You can use a zester or just a few grates is fine. Don't go overboard on the nutmeg because it's really strong. And then for the cinnamon, I like to put just kind of sprinkle it in there to taste really. It's probably going to be about half a teaspoon or a teaspoon or so. And the last thing you want to add to this is your lime zest. So I'm just going to take this little grated part and just take my lime, rub it a few times, and just make sure that you're getting the green part. You see how it starts looking white underneath there? You don't want to grate in the same area because that white part is bitter. So I'm just going to go like that and move my lime around. And I personally like to zest the whole lime in here. If it's too strong for you, feel free to just zest half of it. But this really gives it a good scent and flavor. We can mix that up with our spoon and just set it aside. I need to peel, core, and chop up these apples. Now that my apples are peeled and cored, you just want to cut them down the middle, and then I just rough chop them like this into smaller cubes. You can put them all together, and I just like to cut it the opposite way in just thirds. It doesn't have to be perfect or exact. And you're going to put them into your other bowl. This one's a little big. And chop all your apples the same way. Now that you have your apples all chopped up, you don't want to let them sit at room temperature too long without putting in the lime juice because they'll start turning brown on you. And so I'm just going to take the same lime that we zested, cut it in half, and you're going to put the juice of half of the lime. Toss this around with your spoon to make sure it's all nice and coated. And we can set that aside with our dry mixture as well. So I have my thawed out puff pastry. As you can see, it's not frozen, it's really nice and pliable. You can sprinkle some flour down if you feel like it's getting stuck, but it looks like I'm doing pretty good here. The line, since it came folded in thirds, you want to just cut along those lines right where it was folded with your knife. And then we're going to cut this, let's see how many we can get out of here. I'm going to cut each one of these strips into 3. So this is about a third this way, and another third this way. It doesn't have to be exact because remember this is dough, and so it's really pliable and you'll be able to stretch the pieces out. Now what I like to do after I've cut it and it's still workable with my hands is actually go straight to the surface where I'm going to be baking it in and place them down so that after I put the filling in, I don't have to transfer these. They'll already be where I want them to be. We'll leave this one to the side until I use the other sheet. So I have 8 out of my 9 pieces here. And at this time, I kind of like to stretch them out a little bit just to make it big enough to put a nice chunk of filling in there. Each one of these squares is going to represent a bottom and then a top for our turnover. You want to mix up your dry ingredients very well. And now is when you want to add them to your apples. You don't want to add them too early because then it'll start pulling out all kinds of moisture from the apples and you'll have all kinds of sauce running here. So you want to try to fill them when it's as dry as possible. So mix the dry ingredients into the apple with the lime juice. Lightly toss it to make sure that mixture is very well incorporated with those apples, but you see it's still dry, it's not too juicy, which is what we want. And now we just fill our squares. Be careful not to overflow them. Just like that. And this piece, I'm going to stretch it to make sure it fits over. And just pinch together the edges with your fingers so it's nice and closed up. And we'll go back at the end with a fork and do the same thing. But at this point, I want to work quickly with this mixture before more juices start coming out of these apples. You can move these around quickly, trying not to get them to break. And if you didn't close them well, at this point, you can take a fork and just press all those edges nice and closed. Now we want to take a sharp knife and make a few slits on top just so that the pocket can breathe. So this is optional, but I like to make some egg wash. Just crack 1 egg, just beat it up, add a little water, and take a little pastry brush and brush the top of your little apple popovers. After I brush them with this egg wash, that now serves as a glue. And what I like to do is just take some plain white sugar with a little cinnamon and I mix it up, make some cinnamon sugar, real simple, and just sprinkle it on top. So the egg wash now is going to serve as the glue, and this is going to be crispy and yummy. If you haven't used egg wash before, it's going to give it a nice caramelly and golden brown color to the pastry on top. So So once all your apple turnovers are completed, you want to put them into your already preheated oven at 400 degrees, or make sure that you read the instructions on the box of the puff pastry that you purchased. The one that I had asked for it to be put into a 400 degrees oven, and I'm going to put them in for about 15 to 20 minutes. And you want to keep an eye on it because it depends also on the size of the pastry that you created. So if you feel like using cookie cutters and you want to do different sizes or shapes and play around with your kids, that would be great as well. But remember, if they are smaller, you want to keep an eye on them around the 10 to 12 minute mark and kind of go from there. These will probably need about 15 to 20 minutes. We're going to pop them in the oven and we'll see what they look like when they come out. So after about 17 minutes, our completed apple turnovers are ready to eat. I'm just going to scoop them out and put them on a platter. And as you can see, it's really important to have a non-stick surface because you see this stuff that comes out a little bit. It's okay if it does. It's just the caramelized sugar and the filling coming out here. So if you don't have one of these silpats, what you want to do is definitely use some parchment paper so that they don't stick. But look at this. These are so puffy and yummy. So our little mini apple pie or apple turnovers are completed and they look delicious. I definitely recommend that you all give this a try, whether it's for 4th of July or not. Any time of the week, if you have company coming over, just whip these up. It's great to have puff pastry in your freezer. And if you don't mind, I'm actually just going to take a bite out of one of these. Oh, this is so good. You can see that the cornstarch kind of creates a glaze from the juices of the apple and the lime juice combined. It makes it really nice and glazy in there. And the crust, the puff pastry, of course, is nice and crumbly. Whew. It's still hot, but it's so good. The Golden Delicious apples are great for apple pies and for something like this, a smaller dessert or pastry like this one. Because even with the cooking, it doesn't completely fall apart, so it doesn't turn into applesauce or mush. It still has a nice bite to it. So I definitely recommend Golden Delicious. See you guys next week.